Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammy and Nathan Yeager. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about taking radical ownership of your own life and relationship, healing your relationship with yourself, the gift of someone crossing a personal boundary, what ongoing personal development looks like, and the value of hiring a coach. This week, we're actually interstate visiting lots of our family and friends, so we're going to get straight into this week's episode. So here's this week's guest.
Today we have Natalia Murua joining us. She is the love coach. She is a global dating and relationship expert for women and has been in the mental health and coaching world for over 3 decades now. She works with women from all over the world, helping them to heal their past, love themselves harder, and be competent and confident in relationships. Welcome to the show, Natalia.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
No worries.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. So Natalia, I imagine that having spent over 30 years in this space, in this coaching and relationship space, you've probably seen a few things.
Yes, I have. I didn't start it off as a dating and relationships coach. I started off as a psychoanalyst, as a psychologist. It was more general mental health. So I started doing dating and relationships coaching almost 20 years ago.
Very experienced. I bet you've got some stories for us. So what I would love to dig into, though, is in your bio there, we shared that you help people to heal from their past and really love themselves. And you're on the Date Forever podcast, and we talk about dating yourself and dating your chosen person for forever. And I fundamentally believe that my relationship with myself sets the tone for every other relationship that I have. And there has been periods of my life, even within mine and Nate's relationship, where my relationship with myself hasn't been very strong, or I've damaged it or neglected it. And there's been a few moments where it's like been quite low. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how did you get interested in that element of people building a really strong relationship with themselves?
Yes, well, great question. It started off trying to heal my own relationships. As I said, I started in this area of mental health when I was very young. I was actually 14 years old. And I went really, really heavy into the science, into the scientific part of it, which is neurology, psychology, philosophy. And I was having relationships, I was having a life. And there was always something inside of me that, I wasn't happy. I wasn't just happy. I was always looking for something. And the place where I was looking for the answers was mostly on the mind, on getting information. And so it wasn't until I got to be on my 30s that I moved to the States that I got in touch with the world of coaching. And once I went through my first coaching experience, which was a 5-day immersion coaching experience, which that means you spend 5 days in a room with, in my case, that time was with 200 other people, 12 hours a day.
We have a hunch about what event this might have been. Was it with Tony Robbins?
I have done Tony Robbins a few times, but later on.
Okay.
That was 20 years ago. This was an amazing company that is still my favorite company. And I have been trained, as I said, by Tony Robbins and by the best in the United States. So I have gone through even longer periods of immersion coaching after that. That company, if you want to know the name, is called Landmark Education.
That was the beginning of Nate's personal development journey too.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. Some people love it, some people don't. To me, it was what I now call, back then I didn't call it like this, but now I call my awakening experience, where I went from being extremely educated. I am by nature a nerd. I read as if it's going out of style, love it. I went from being in my head, having all this information about psychology and philosophy and how the mind works, and different models of helping other people to I dropped to my heart. And that was the missing link for me. I had a disconnect. And I found that at that time that the congruency between the heart and the mind was really, really important. And everything made sense for me. It was such a good experience where I was like, oh my God, this is what my life is about. This is what life is about. So that was a big, big before and after in my life. And I was married at the time, and the marriage wasn't going in the right direction. I wasn't happy. We weren't. Now, so many years later after the divorce, it ended up in divorce. It was very painful. I was letting him abuse me emotionally. And it ended up with me finding him with another woman in my house. That was the day that I felt like enough is enough. This is it. I had the hard conversation with myself, and I asked this question. I asked Natalia, what is the common denominator in all these years? I was 32, 33 at that time. I can't remember exactly. And I had been dating since I had my first boyfriend when I was 19. So it had been 13, 14 years of being in bad relationships, pretty much. So I said, what is the common denominator in this? What's going on here? And the loud and clear answer that came to my heart was, you, Natalia. You are the common denominator in all this. You have to stop blaming it on others. I was still waiting for the charming prince to save me.
I'm sorry that you had that experience, but I just love the way that you've described it, because you've taken that experience from a place of like radical ownership. Like, what was it that I was doing, saying, allowing, permitting in this relationship that it ended in that, what I'm sure was very confronting scenario in your own home?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's it. I chose to take ownership and let go of the victim mentality. And it was very clear to me, all this. And that was when I decided to do the work in the area of relationships. I hired a coach, a dating and relationships coach, and I started to work on myself and I didn't know what I was going to work on, being honest with you. I didn't know how. It was a lot of letting go of the how to, letting go of control, letting go of knowing exactly how my life was going to look and my relationships and everything. I let go of everything. And I just showed me the way. And I was open to let go of all the things that didn't work for me anymore. And that was an amazing experience. Was years of being coached by people and starting coaching myself, other women also. Almost at the same time, after a few months of doing the work on myself, I had the opportunity to start coaching other single women that were going through the same process. And that accelerated my own experience, my own growth, my own evolution exponentially, because in my personality, the way I am, I have to walk the talk. I do believe in that. I don't think everybody has to be like that, but for me, that's one of my standards. I couldn't tell these women or suggest these women or coach these women go on dates, have an online dating app. And this is 17 years ago when only weirdos had. Okay, I was, leading the way, trailblazer,
Pioneer.
Pioneer. I found myself that was one of the barriers that these ladies had. They didn't want to go online dating, and it's a fast way to meet people and to learn really on the field what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like. It's great school. And so I said, okay, I have resistance to do that. I don't have a dating app. So I got a dating app. So I could walk the talk. And yes, so I worked on everything, named it communication, how to be an adult in relationships. The fact that I was in this immature way of relating that came from lack of good role models in my childhood and also some trauma that I had in my childhood. Being stuck in in that pattern of being immature and not knowing what to do in a healthy, mature relationship didn't allow me to learn the skills and the abilities to be in a healthy relationship. So I was self-sabotaging and I was doing all sorts of things that were against me and my well-being and my emotional being. I worked on my emotional intelligence. I did a lot of work. I took it really seriously.
Yeah.
And so, yes, so that led me to love myself. You will think you are doing work on relationships, you're going to work on men and all that. Well, I did get a big, deep understanding of how men are. And over the years, all these have been amplified, of course. But from my own point of view, it wasn't so much about men. It was all about me at the end.
Yeah.
It was all about me being in a good place, in a place of radical self-acceptance, in a place of, I had a very strong masculine energy. I was a go-getter, I still am, but I was using it in the wrong area of my life also. So dropping into my feminine energy and choosing to be that kind of partner in the relationship. So yes, it was a completely, deeply transformational process that affected not only my relationships, it affected my whole life.
I think it's really powerful that this whole journey of yours started from that radical ownership of like, what role am I playing in all of these things that are playing out in my life? And I think that's such a powerful realization to make, because it's, if I have been the person that has allowed these things, or that I've got this story about these things that I can't change or whatever, you taking ownership of that in the first place allows you to change it. And I think that's like really the amazing starting point of like, yeah, that radical ownership. It's like, well, if I've been a contributor to all of this, I can now change that.
Absolutely. It all starts with taking responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not our fault what happened to us at all. I mean, sometimes we play a little role in it or a big role, but most of the time it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility to do something about it if we want to see a change.
Yeah. And it's our responsibility to react in a way that is beneficial to us rather than detrimental as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so Nath, maybe you could share from your landmark experience. I can't even remember what year that was now, but it's probably like 5 years ago, maybe
5
more.
or 6 years, yeah.
What was your big, because I think like what you said, Natalia, you look back on that, and although you probably wouldn't have used the language at the time, I feel like that was a very big crossroad for you, Nath. I feel like that was a very big awakening, and the person that you went in before that 5 days versus after was different, fundamentally different. Yeah. What was your big takeaway from that experience?
Oh, I think mine was probably that radical ownership. There is all these external factors and things like that, but the one common denominator in my life is me. And like, yes, shitty things happen and I can try and blame those on other people, but really it's up to me to determine the meaning that I attribute to things that have happened, or the way that I continue to react, or the way that I continue to show up when shitty things do happen. So I think that was really the key takeaway, that I am in the driver's seat of my own life and I get to make the decisions and the thoughts and reinforce behaviors and things like that I want to.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So Natalia, I'm curious, you mentioned that your relationship, your marriage was not in a great place. Was that at the time that you went and did 5 days at Landmark, or was it, had the walking in on your partner with someone else incident occurred before?
No, I did Landmark before all this.
So you laid some groundwork for your own point of view. So when that incident occurred, you were already taking charge.
I was, and I think this is important to understand this sometimes. I was extremely knowledgeable at the mind level. So I knew all that.
Yeah. Working in mental health space, working with
Yes.
psychology.
And also I went on at age 23, I started my journey into yoga and Eastern philosophy. So by the time I was on my 30s, I was a master on all things. I would talk, and I was an encyclopedia. I mean, I had all the knowledge. I had all the knowledge to help other people. But there is a difference between knowing and information. I mean, to say it in other words, today we live in an age and time that is so beautiful. We are so blessed this time we live on. I don't think there has been any other time better than this to live on. We have so much freedom and so much access to information. Pretty much you open Instagram and you have so much advice. You could really turn around your life just going on Instagram. Now, how come 50% of first marriages still end up on divorce? How come 70% of second-time marriages end up in divorce? How come here in the United States, the obesity pandemic is rampant? How come here in the United States, mental health is off the chart? People are suffering a lot. So it's not about information. Information is useless unless there is an integration of that information and a reflection on that information, and we embody that. So that is what happened to me during Landmark. It wasn't really, it made sense to a heart level. That's it. There was a knowing, an embodiment where I didn't have to think anymore. How am I going to react, as Nathan was saying? And I was just responding from a space, from an inner space of being grounded, of knowing myself and accepting myself, that I wasn't perfect, that I had a big part to play in my failures, in my relationships, and that I was a work in progress. As we said here, it's progression, not perfection. That was my mantra for years. That helped me to get grounded.
I just love that you've said that, because I literally have on my vision board here, one of my mantras is strive for progression, not perfection. It's like right here, right next to me, because I was
beautiful.
I spent quite a lot of time very hung up on getting things just so, and now like prolific beats perfect for me. Like I want to get it 80% there. That's close enough for most things most of the time. I mean, there's obviously things that I do want to go the extra mile and get it just so, but yeah, I'm really trying to embody more of that. I'm here to make progress and experience the thing that I can or I want to, even if it's not exactly how I would have if it had been perfect and everything exactly so, enjoy things as they are.
Yeah, you're a human being at the end of the day, not a robot. So,
Absolutely, that's what makes us beautiful. Rumi, the Sufi poet, said something like, "The cracks is where the light can come in." So that's what makes us beautiful. But going along with what you just said, I would like to add to that. Coming back to relationships, it's so important for us as humans to accept that we are not perfect. Because only in accepting ourselves as being a work in progress is that we can truly accept the other. When we are critical towards ourselves, when we are judging ourselves for every single little mistake we make, when we are paralyzed by trying to be perfect. If I don't do it perfectly, I don't do it at all. We are not creating that space in the relationship where the other person can feel safe with us, because we relate to the other as we relate to ourselves, and the other person can feel that. So if we don't create that space inside of us of inner self-acceptance, of course I am not talking about just say, I cheat, so I'm going to keep cheating because I'm not perfect. No, I'm talking about, yes, I have flaws. I'm flawed and I am working on it. I'm working on evolving. I am always evolving in the direction that I want to go. But I love and accept myself anyway. It's when our partner can feel that and say, wow, she loves and accepts herself, even when she's not perfect. Wow, that's amazing. She's going to love me and accept me because I am not perfect.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. So Natalia, I'm curious, what was your relationship like with yourself at the time that your marriage was not in a good place? Like, how were you treating yourself, or how were you taking care of yourself?
It wasn't good. It wasn't very good. It was a constant battle in my own mind, constantly beating myself up because I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't skinny enough, I wasn't smart enough, because I didn't speak English perfectly fast enough. It was I am not enough. And the biggest hurdle for me to conquer, I had this deep belief inside of me that I wasn't lovable. So that was the inner framework for me. That was what was giving me my reality. I was coming from a place, I am not lovable. So I was an overachiever. I will go the extra mile on everything. And yes, and unfortunately, I married a man that preyed on that. So instead of helping me to heal, he preyed on that. He was like, yeah, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got into that vicious cycle where my own limiting beliefs, my own trauma from my past was being fed through him. And it led to what it usually leads in these situations, where it led to me being completely isolated from the rest of the world. So he became my sounding board, and that sounding board wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
So,
and then, of course, you wouldn't have wanted to leave him because you would have felt that if you're not lovable, then who else would want to love you? And so
absolutely.
you end up getting trapped in that situation.
Absolutely. I always said I was blessed, and this may trigger some people. So with all my love, I understand we are all in a different place. But at the moment that I found him with the other woman, I felt the blessing. I was like, this is your way out. Because he crossed a line that I wasn't able to, that was my limit.
Yeah, that thing, like, that was your rock bottom. You know how, like, I'm sure
Correct.
we've all got those friends, family relationships that you've seen around you in some capacity where you've gone, surely that is a boundary that person or that incident has crossed. And for that person, it's not. And there's a bottom that's lower than what you've observed. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that for you, that was the rock bottom. That was the boundary. Like, no, I won't tolerate that. I think that's really important to articulate and to identify. And I think, like, the little asterisk here, the little disclaimer, like, we want to empower people to have healthy, happy, thriving relationships, but not without acknowledging that there are relationships that are incredibly unhealthy, that have violence. The story that we're telling here, it does not apply to that. It's like there's boundaries that you absolutely should not ever tolerate, and think that there's a bottom below that. But yeah, I think that's acknowledging that for yourself, of going, wow, he crossed that boundary. What a gift. What a gift to me. Correct. Because now I'm free.
Correct. I agree with you. It's very important. And I always try to make it clear in my social media that the advice or my content is for healthy relationships, for healthy men. It doesn't apply for toxic relationships.
Yeah.
I think it's important to clarify that.
Yeah. So Natalia, you've just described, like, the state of your relationship with yourself at that time in your life. What's your relationship with yourself like now?
Oh my goodness. It's amazing. It's amazing. I never, ever thought I was going to be in this place in my life. Really, I am in a place where I didn't even know it existed. again, work in progress. I'm the first one to say, there are still things that I need to work. And as we evolve and as we grow, our challenges look different. But I am content. I am happy with who I am. I am so proud in a way, although I don't like that word too much, but I will use it. I am so proud of myself, of the woman I became, having all the reasons to become bitter. I chose to become better. And I did it with grace. I did it with love. I did it with opening my heart more and more. I always ask the question, what is the lesson here? How can I grow through this? I allowed myself to have pity parties. That was important, but I gave myself a limit.
Yeah.
Okay, you will have a pity party at the beginning for a day, and then I started to, and now I snap out of it immediately. I catch myself, and it's automatic. I do have a few techniques that I use when I get triggered, and so I do use them. I always tell my clients, I am not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done and worked, or that I am not doing right now. I am very, very proud of walking my talk. And I am married. I am happily married. I have been with my husband for over 13 years. We have been married for, over 7 years. And he is amazing. He's actually, I think it's important to me to mention that, because this is other thing that I see sometimes with clients or women I talk, that they believe they have to do the work by themselves. And if you are alone, do it by yourself. But it's not better or worse. It's just one way of doing it. When I met my husband, I wasn't 100% healed. I still had some trusting issues due to the cheating situation. So at the beginning, I had fears that he was going to cheat. And he provided with an environment that I could finish my healing process.
That's really beautiful.
He helped me a lot with his patience, with his love, with his reassuring me. I trusted him over time. He wasn't pushing things. He really, really created the environment where I could finally heal. And once that happened, boom.
I
don't know.
Thank you for sharing that, because I actually had a very similar experience with the start of mine and Nate's relationship. At the beginning of our relationship, I found myself continually bracing to be yelled at for very minor kind of occurrences or things that I can now see are minor. But at the time, that was my programming and that was my experience, that I'd had a partner who would yell and get angry and express quite aggressively how I had fucked up or how I wasn't good enough. And I don't know, how long do you reckon it took before that was no longer my default to
probably a couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. With Nathan, I've been together for 15 years now, so it is quite a long time.
The beginning of our relationship is a little blurry.
Yeah. But you're right. Nathan created an incredibly healing space for me to learn what a healthy dynamic could look like. And I think at the beginning you were confused about why I was having this kind of response. Whoa, that's not on the scale of emotion to the incident that's occurred, or whoa. So, but I did a lot of healing in the early days of our relationship, and I'm, very grateful. And I'm not sure that I ever would have been able to do that in isolation. I'm very grateful that Nath gave me the learning space to arrive at that place. So, Natalia, you talked to us a little bit about what your relationship was like and what it is now with yourself. And you mentioned that you did a lot of work. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you practically and tactically did? Did you watch, read, listen, do? Talk us through some of the things that worked for you.
I hired people.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a coach too.
Yeah.
Well, with my background in psychology, by the time I moved to the States, I had already been through series of therapy. And it didn't really work for me that much. So, but I grew up in an environment where asking for help was normal. So I know here in the States, it's getting better, but there is a little bit of a stigma. Sometimes people feel shame when they isolate themselves, and that makes things only worse. So what I did was being who I was. I asked for help. First, I hired a life coach, Heidi, and she was amazing.
Your face is glowing even as you're recalling Heidi.
I will never forget her smell. It's just funny. She smelled she used to wear fur coats.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She protected the fur with some kind of product, I think. So she smelled a very particular smell. So Heidi held my hand through all the divorce process, and it made it so much easier. She taught me a lot of techniques to help to regulate self-soothe my nervous system. Although I didn't know I was doing that at the time, but now, I know all the in and outs of things. When I was done with Heidi, I hired a dating and relationships coach. And it's so amazing because nowadays he's one of the best known coaches in the USA, and he does business coaching now. And I was taking a class with him last week. Completely different subject, so full circle.
Yeah.
His wife is actually a dating and relationships coach. And so I did that for months. I kept taking classes with Landmark Education. So I got really, really heavy into it. And I was reading books. I have always read my whole life. I had a TV when I was 8 years old. So I grew up reading. And through my life, I have read more books than I am willing to say. And I am not into fiction. So I read a ton of books, every single book that I could get on relationships, communications, And so I did that heavily, a combination of coaching and self-study for about 5 years. And then I was living in South Florida, and I moved to Nevada. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada now.
Oh, wow.
That's where I am at right now. And when I moved here, something very important happened in my life too, that completely changed my life. I got into running. Never ran, didn't even own a pair of sneakers or anything. And on my first run outside, I was running on the treadmill. But when I decided to join a running group, I met my now husband.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He got first picks. There is a joke around in the community that he got me right there, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we met that day, and we are still together. So when I met him, I kind of stopped the coaching. I didn't do coaching for a few years. I can remember a few years, 7 years, something like that. And I needed that time to integrate everything and to really, really understand. So I kept meditating. I have been meditating for over 20 years, journaling. And when I came back to the coaching scene, that was about 5 years ago, I started to do some different things. I decided to go and explore my feminine side. And that was really, really powerful for me. Really, really powerful to discover the distinctions and, to see how they were playing in my relationships and to choose what is best for me when I am in a relationship. So that has been probably, and I have done a ton of coaching on other subjects, business and things like that. But the most impactful transformation that I have had in the past few years was really, really diving into my feminine energy.
Yeah, amazing.
Beautiful.
So Natalia, you've kind of mentioned that all of the things that you recommend for your clients are stuff that you have done or are doing yourself. So I guess in that relationship space, what are some of the things that you're doing in your romantic relationship to keep it fueled up?
Oh, yeah. Well, I listen to your podcast, guys, so I know you're going to agree with me on this and the name of the podcast. But I truly believe in dating your partner forever,
Yeah.
as you said. So weekly dates. With my husband, we have something really good in common that we both love and feel super connected when we are in nature, and we have running. So we do a lot of those things. We are not big into going out for dinner or shows or things like that. It's not really our thing. But we do make time to get our quality time when we go on our runs during the week, or we go to the movies, we watch movies together. And we make it a point that every quarter, so 4 times a year, we go on a trip together.
Yeah.
And we usually go to a place that is super beautiful, Big Sur in California. And we try to pick a cabin or a lodge in the middle of the woods where we don't have access to our phone and things like that. And we try our best. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we do have the phone. But that's mainly to spend a few days in nature, in a new place. I believe novelty is pretty good for recreating the spark, because it's important to keep being curious about your partner, as you know. And when you're in a place that is completely new, it just sparks your creativity, your inner child comes at the forefront, you get more playful, everything is new, everything is exciting, and that kind of translates into the relationship. So, but that's basically the core of our relationship, how we keep it going.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's really important to acknowledge like what works for you, or the activities or interests and things that the two of you share that might not be for everyone, and vice versa. That like Nathan and I are huge into going to shows and eating, but we also love being in nature, and we do quite a lot of that. But yeah, I think it's about finding the unique thing that you really love to do together that's really enjoyable. But one of our very early guests, Keith Abraham, he's a specialist in goal setting, and one of the things that he said is like, one of the powers of goal setting as a couple is that it aligns you to be on the same team, and you've got a common goal, and it's something that you're working towards together, but it creates new experiences. It creates new opportunities, which is, like you said, in the beginning of a relationship, everything is new and unique. So I guess you get the opportunity to create variety through being intentional together. So I thank you for sharing that. If there was one more thing that you would recommend for couples or individuals to a habit or practice to implement to keep their relationship either with themselves or with their partner fueled up, what would it be?
I will say remain curious. Just be open and curious about who is this person you're sharing your life with. Ask open-ended questions. Create time. The biggest obstacle to do the dating, the weekly dating, or however it looks for, it's time. So just put it in the calendar, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be, I don't know, a picnic in the park, but make it a priority to get out and have quality time and be curious and practice active listening, where you listen to this beautiful human that is sharing your life with you without trying to have the answer, without trying to have the perfect comeback phrase. Just listen, be present, stay curious, and don't avoid judging, criticizing, giving advice, complaining about him or her. Just be present in the moment. And we all have things in common, but we also have things that are different. So with the things that are in common, it's a no-brainer. We love them, we embrace them. Now, with the things that we have differently, I think it's important to see how those differences can enhance our life. And that can only happen when we are present and in the moment. And that takes effort. That's the last thing that I'm going to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
It takes effort. We need to grow up and understand that it takes effort.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the differences there, because so often it's those differences in a relationship which is what attracted you to that person in the first place. And then as you move down the path of your relationship, you go, oh, that thing's a bit like, why can't they just do it the way that I do it? Or why do they have to be so different? But I think that really just detracts from what made you fall in love with them in the first place.
Absolutely. I was very aware of that starting my relationship with my husband, that when we met, we were already adults. We were already made. We weren't going to change each other. We were there to accept and love each other. And he had some things that the old Natalia would have stopped. Like, it would have advised him to not do it. And I actually made a conscious choice. I said, you are not going to say anything about it, because if you start cutting the things that make him happy, you fell in love with him because he's a happy guy. So if you start telling him, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, why are you doing that? Why? He's going to become another person. And it's going to be really hard to stay in love with a person that is not the person you fell in love with to begin with. So I made a very conscious effort, because my default mode, my reacting mode, my survival mode was, you do this, that.
Especially as a coach, where you spend so much time coaching others to be better.
I know. It's a constant reminder as a coach. I do my best to not give advice. And I ask my friends, I say, do you want to know my friendly opinion, or you want to know my professional opinion? And most of the time, 9 out of 10, they tell me, I want you to be my friend right now.
Yeah, so that's a really important reframe. So thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for sharing some of the insights from what you learned on your journey from falling back in love with yourself, and then keeping that relationship with yourself really fueled up, and in your marriage as well. So to say thank you, we've given a year's worth of seeds to help a family grow some really nourishing food in Malawi. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no worries. It's been great to have you. So, Natalia, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, how can they do that?
Instagram, it's a great place. I am always there at Epic Love Coach.
Yep.
That would be a good place to start.
Yeah, amazing.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.